Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. It's always a pleasure for me to be here to talk a little bit about TradeStation. Today's topic is adding plots to existing studies. So we're going to talk a little bit about EasyLanguage and how to modify indicators that already exist on the TradeStation platform to be a little bit more to our own trading style and to really serve us better than what they originally are. A lot of the indicators, they have default settings, they have default plot statements, default alert criteria, and sometimes as a trader, we may want to switch that around or enhance it a little bit. So today's class is all about modifying what already exists on the platform. So before we get started, the usual disclosures, keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable for everyone, and past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. If anybody needs additional information on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right, let's talk about plots and a little bit about EasyLanguage. I am not sure how much knowledge you have on the EasyLanguage development environment or EasyLanguage overall, but most of my classes, they're pretty basic in terms of, I always keep in mind that a lot of you are just getting started with EasyLanguage and may not be a full-blown programmer. I don't consider myself to be a programmer, but I do have enough knowledge to modify indicators and create some custom indicators as well. So, and I always tell clients of TradeStation, if you have a little bit of knowledge of EasyLanguage, it's going to take your trading and analysis to that next level, which helps you. You can modify things to your liking and make sure that they work for your own trading style. So let's go ahead and get started here. One thing that I wanted to point out is that the chat is open. You are welcome to submit any comments or any questions via chat, and I'll be there to provide them to you, okay? Terry, good question about the PDF slides. I was editing the slides before we started the class today, and I didn't get a chance to create a PDF. However, if you need the content, I mean, my content today is pretty simple. It's just 2 slides. So if you can screen capture those, that would be great. But if you need a PDF of the slides, I'll create one and send it over to you via email. Please send me an email, and I'll make sure to send that over to you. So it's education@tradestation.com. I'm putting that right there in the chat so that everyone can see it. And that way we can communicate not only about this class, but about any other class that we've done in the past. So feel free to reach out. Talking about plot statements, a plot is a calculated value that is displayed on each bar. And it's important that we understand the plot statement if our intention today is to modify them. Anytime that EasyLanguage uses the word plot means that we're going to draw something on the chart. Now, this drawing can be a line, it can be, it can be text, it can be a cross, it can be a dot, it can be anything. But you have to tell EasyLanguage what is it that you're going to draw on the chart. And we use the word plot as a way of telling EasyLanguage that we want to have visibility of a value on a graph. A plot statement are how indicators display values in a chart. I think we kind of explained that just a moment ago. The indicators are scaled to the y-axis in the chart and can grow that y-axis based on the plot value. What that means is that our charting technology automatically adjusts to the scale. So if you have an indicator that plots values that are higher than what the current price activity is or lower than what the current price activity is, thus the chart will adjust so that you can see the full, the the full drawing of your indicator. A lot of times that may not be what you want, maybe you want to concentrate on the price bars, and if it does reach those higher or lower values, then you want visibility. But by default, yes, the chart will adjust to whatever value you put on the chart. If we go to the TradeStation platform and we are in the need of disabling this default functionality or behavior, we can do that. But just keep in mind that these values are always going to be plotted on the chart and on a shared scale. And it's important to know because many times we create an indicator that plots a value that is very different than what the current price activity is. And I've seen sometimes, happen that when you put in an indicator on the chart, the candlesticks or the bars kind of flatten out, and they're either all the way at the bottom or all the way at the top as a flat plot, which is caused sometimes by these, plot statements that don't really align with the prices of the underlying. But those are things that come with practice. When you create or modify indicators in TradeStation and you put them on a chart and something's odd, it doesn't look right, then that could be a learning experience to find out and figure out, what the issue could be. But yeah, the chart will automatically adjust to the values of your indicator. They can be displayed in different styles and set to any color, which helps you identify which one is which. I like the feature a lot. We take pride in TradeStation in the way that traders can customize it in any way that you think possible. And customization by style and color is something that we provide on any plot statement in TradeStation. You can make it any color, you can make it any style, whether it is a thin or a thick line or a dotted line, whatever it may be. And an indicator can have up to 99 different plots. I haven't come across an indicator that has 99 different lines. I imagine that it would be very cluttered on the chart. It would look like spaghetti, but there are some indicators that have, a significant number of plots. And we just, just keep in the back of your mind that you can have up to 99, which is good to know, because the whole reason why we have this class is because you're going to be adding additional lines to your indicators, and you can go up all the way to 99. So let's talk about syntax and EasyLanguage and the way that this would look on your code. So this is the standard syntax that you would use for a plot statement. Plot, don't mind the bullet or the dot on the left-hand side, is the word plot. The capital N is just a number, right? That the number can be 1 all the way through 99. Depending on how you're building your code, you can start at 1. You don't have to start at 1, but it needs a number, and the plot statement number cannot be repeated. So you cannot say plot number 1 is going to be this and then repeat it later in the code, and plot 1 is going to be that, because that's going to be a conflict and it's going to generate an error. So each plot will have its unique number, and you can start at any number, but usually, just to keep the sequence going, we start with plot 1, or at least you're going to see that in indicators of TradeStation. All plot statements are with plot number 1, but you can go up to 99. And then in parentheses, you have to tell the plot statement where exactly on the chart is it that you want to draw. Most of the time, it's a value related to the price activity, whether it is an average or a Bollinger Band, and it's going to have the value that's plotted right on the candlesticks. If the calculated value is completely different than what the price activity is, or the values of the security that you're watching, then you may have to put that indicator in a separate subgraph. For example, if you were plotting average through a range is how big the candlesticks are from high to low as an average. If you put that on top of the candlesticks, it'll have that behavior that we talked about earlier, where the candlesticks are going to be flatlined, whether I think they're going to be flatlined at the top because the average is a lesser value. So think about the plot that you're going to be adding. And if it's something that needs to be in a separate subgraph, then there are properties that control where the indicator is going to plot. But that's what we say about in parentheses is exactly where you tell EasyLanguage that it needs to draw. And this portion right here, let me bring my cursor in here. This comma, quotation, text label, it is optional. It's a way for you to name your plots, especially if you have many of them. It's recommended to have a text label or a plot label added to your plot statement so that you can identify it later on. We can add it if we want to or skip it. You're going to see the different behavior once we go over to our example today. Here are some examples. Plot 1, 50, and then the label says 50 inside quotations. What that will do is on every candlestick or on every candle, whether it is on top of the candles or below the candles, it'll plot the value at 50. So that's something that we can try here on our TradeStation as well. This second example is an average of slow K. Slow K is one of the calculated values of stochastic. So this is just pretty much creating an average of the slow K. Notice that you can separate that from stochastics and enter it as a plot statement. And this third example is a slow K calculation on the RSI. Notice that RSI is nested inside parentheses and inside the slow K function. And these are just examples. You don't have to necessarily do, these advanced technical calculations on a technical indicator. So the combination of a slow K RSI, it's an interesting concept because you're taking the calculation of two technical ideas and combining them, and then you're creating a slow K calculation of an RSI is something that is worth, taking a look and see if it's something that provides us any value. But these are provided as examples where you can combine different mathematical formulas together into one. A note to remember, only modify copies of existing indicators using File, Save As in the EasyLanguage development environment. A lot of times, and I do that many times myself, which I shouldn't, which is I go inside of the code and I change that code, the original code, and then I have no way of knowing what was there before. So many times, if you're going to experiment with modifying existing indicators, make sure that you save as so that you make the modifications to a copy and not the original. That way you can always come back and look at what the original had, or even scratch your modified study because you probably broke it or something, and then you always have something to go back to. Okay, so make sure that you use the save as to create copies. And that's it. My content is pretty straightforward. Just remember that you can have up to 99 different plots inside of a code. So now we're going to go over to TradeStation and look at several examples and show you how you can modify those indicators. Let me switch over here to the platform. We have a daily chart of Microsoft, and we're going to start off with something simple. I'm going to add a study. Remember, this is existing indicators that we want to modify. Let's go here to RSI. RSI is the relative strength index indicator. It plots in a separate subgraph, and it's designed to identify overbought and oversold levels. Pretty straightforward. It's been around for ages. This is the way that it looks by default. You may want to add additional plots. For example, the standard indicator has an overbought and an oversold level. We see those green lines going across. Maybe you also want to monitor the halfway point of this RSI indicator, meaning that you want to know what 50 is. This is the values of the RSI go from 0 all the way to 100. And yes, the indicator, of course, identifies the overbought and the oversold level. In fact, it gives you the ability to modify those values by going into the inputs. Like if I double click on the indicator, I can change my oversold and my overbought levels, but I don't have a line that goes right in the middle. Maybe I use the crossing above 50 or below 50 also as a signal, whether it is to enter or to exit some of the trades that the RSI generates. But whatever the reason is, maybe we want to track that 50 level. We can modify these two, but for this example, I do want to keep the overbought level and the oversold level. I just want to add an additional line that gives me a visual of where 50 is. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to go to the EasyLanguage. Notice that you can go from within this customize indicator dialog. You have the ability to edit the EasyLanguage, and what will happen is that it'll open up the development environment and it'll open up the EasyLanguage code for this specific indicator, which is convenient. Now you can do it from here, or sometimes what I do is I right-click on the indicator, and from here you have the option to edit the EasyLanguage for the RSI. This is the one that I mostly use, so this shortcut. So right-click on the study, edit the EasyLanguage for RSI. Notice that this opens up the TradeStation development environment, and it opens up the RSI indicator for me. Now, in here, I'm going to make the modifications. If this is the first time that you look at EasyLanguage code, there is a lot of text. A lot of it is annotations and tooltips that doesn't really add calculated values to the indicator, but they're there for reference. What I want you guys to do when you're looking to add plot statements is to find the area where the plots are. And you can see that on this study on line 22, 23, and 24, I have plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3. If your development environment does not have the reference lines here on the left-hand side, that's something that I've turned on my development environment, because it helps me tell you guys, hey, look at line 22 or look at line 10, and you know exactly where to direct your attention. If you like these numbers, they are available under Tools, and then click on Options, Tool Options, and on the General tab, you're going to find a check box that says Line Numbers. Just make sure that's checked, that should give you the line numbers there on the left. I've also, bumped up my font size. I know for a fact that when you open up the development environment, the font is pretty small. It's like programmer font, which is really small. Just go to Tools and go to Options, and then you can go to Code Font. Notice that mine has been set to 16 just because in the webinar, I'm able to, project to you and you can see the code clearly. But just set something that is comfortable to your eyes and you don't have to strain your eyes, okay? So going back here to my example, I have my plot statements. Notice that one of the plots is going to plot the RSI value, and the other two are going to plot the overbought and the oversold. So I can use this area to modify my code. Now, one thing that we did say, don't change the original one unless you want to. You don't necessarily have to create a copy, but most of the time I do, so that I can always revert back to my original. So File, Save As, and I'm going to call this JN RSI. This name may already exist. Notice that I'm adding JN because JN are my name initials, and I'm adding an exclamation mark because this will sort to the top. So that's just a prefix that you can choose any prefix on your studies, but using a prefix allows you to keep your examples together. I'm going to click OK, and it says it already exists because I may have done this class many times and I already have a JN RSI. So let me go ahead and remove that before I create it. I'm going to open up my list of indicators. And you can do that on your side as well. So if you're asking yourself, well, if I create something, and I want to clean it out, how do I delete it? You can see that in the indicator list, I have a ton of on exclamation JN indicators. But if I go to the RSI, I have one, which I'm going to right click and remove. And I say yes. And I have all these RSI indicators that I may have created at one point, just variations of different RSI, different examples. I don't use them all. I've just created variations of the RSI and added, so many different things. But let's just go ahead and delete that one. And that way I can come here and say File, Save As, and exclamation JN RSI. Now I can use the name because I deleted the one that was already there. You can take a look at the tab. Now the tab is not only called RSI indicator, it's called exclamation JN RSI indicator. And all I'm going to do on this indicator is put my cursor right here at the very end of plot number 3. I'm going to hit the enter key and I'm going to type in plot 4 and use the syntax that we saw in one of my PowerPoint slides where we just have 50. And I can add a label if I want to. I can say 50, or I can just put in a number. Whatever you put inside quotations, this is just text. It doesn't have any special requirements. As long as the label is inside quotations, you're going to be fine. And then close the parentheses, and then add a semicolon at the very end. Semicolon is one of those punctuations that are important in EasyLanguage. Semicolon tells EasyLanguage that you've reached the end of the statement and you're going to go on to something different. Otherwise, if you don't put a semicolon, it's going to try to mix that plot 4 statement with the next line that it finds, which is line 28. And it's going to say, hey, something's not right here. I need something else. How do you plot a trend line on an indicator is a question that Nick is asking. Good question. And I believe we have classes on creating trend lines on indicators. It's a totally different process. Here, it's a calculated value, which oscillates, or you can have a horizontal line. Like, for example, here, if I plot 50, it's going to create a visual line at 50. Let me verify this. I verify so that it recognizes my plot number 4. And even before I use it on the chart, I may want to modify the way that it looks. If you want to modify the color and the style of that plot, right-click on the study and go to Properties. In Properties, you're going to go to the chart style. And notice that now, not only under plots, you see RSI, overbought and oversold, you also see your 50, the one that I added. If you don't verify before coming here, 50 is not available because it doesn't see it. So you have to verify first so that it recognizes the change and the addition of plot number 4, and then you see it here in the properties. I'm going to make this a dotted line. So I'm going to click the dotted line style. I'm going to go to the chart color, and I'm going to make it gray, a medium gray right there. I'm going to click OK. And then verify one more time. Just like a 2-step process, you add the line, then you verify. And then you go into the properties to assign a style to that line, but then you have to verify one more time. Okay, so just remember that you have to verify 2 times. Let's go here to my chart and take a look at what I did. Let me remove the indicator that's there. So goodbye RSI. Go to Studies, add, oh, I clicked on the wrong thing, not strategy. Let's go to Studies, add study, and I'm going to go here to my group of studies, which is exclamation JN, and just the plain old RSI right here. I'm going to click OK, and there it is. Take a look at my RSI at the bottom. Notice that it shows a plot at 50. And as a dotted line. So, and it's interesting that we, change the style, because if you don't assign a style or a color, TradeStation will just choose whatever color is default on that line. And sometimes, indicators that just use default colors, they hurt your eyes just because, the colors are kind of off. But if you already imagine your indicator and have a preference on color, you can set those colors and styles before you even see it on the chart. Okay, so that's adding a 50 line right there on the graph. You can do the same here on the actual on the actual graph, the same way that we did here with this line, where you say plot at any value. If you say plot at 400, it'll create a horizontal line at 400, and it'll be very simple to do. Let's go to another indicator. I'm going to go to studies, add study, and I'm going to use let's go to the Keltner channel. All right. Let's remove the RSI right here from the bottom. So the Keltner channel is a simple moving average, which is that midline right there. I believe it's a simple moving average. We'll go into the code and make sure that it's a simple calculation. But this is a simple moving average, and then it calculates two bands, the blue band and the red band, based on averaged true range. Let's go into the code. I'm going to right-click and go to Edit EasyLanguage for a Keltner channel. All right, so here's the code for the Keltner channel. Let me scroll down. And you can see that on the average of the price, it is a simple average. Otherwise, we would see X average, which is an exponential average, or W average, which is it would be a weighted average. But if it just says average, FC is just a fast calculation. It was modified to provide you a fast calculation, but just the word average means it's a simple moving average. And over here in the shift, is calculating a shift that is this function, average true range, already built into the code. You don't have to, write out the formula for the average true range. It does need a length to know how many bars back are you looking for in order to calculate this average true range. And then it has a number of ATRs. You are multiplying whatever the ATR number is by a factor that provides you this shift. If you look at the very top, we see the default inputs. For example, the length is set to 20, so it's using 20 bars for the average true range, and the number of ATRs right now is set to 1.5. So whatever the average true range that it finds is going to multiply it by 1.5, and then it's going to create the upper band by adding the average and the shift. And it's going to create the lower band by subtracting the shift from the average. Does that make sense? It's very straightforward. Once you understand the structure and the syntax of EasyLanguage code, it's easy to identify these sections and be able to read them and understand how we can modify them. Now, the plot statements in this indicator, line 26, 27, and 28, which are three lines, the three lines that are drawn on the indicator are inside in an if-then statement. We're not going to really, pay attention to that. What we need is the plot statement here. And we have the upper band, the lower band, and the midline. What we need is plot number 4. Uh-oh. I did something bad. I didn't save it as a different one. I was just going to modify the original. And I told you I do this all the time, where I mess up the original indicator and then I have to struggle looking for where to get the original code from. I'm going to go to the File menu, Save As, and I'm just going to add !JN at the very beginning of this indicator. And of course, it's already in use. The name is already in use, which means that I already created a variation of JN Keltner channel, which I'm going to delete right now. So it's right here. Right-click, remove. Yes, and cancel. So now I should be able to save it as the name that I want. So just adding !JN Keltner channel. Okay, so adding this additional calculated value is a little bit more intricate, and you'll need a little bit more EasyLanguage, but it's not something so difficult to do. We need additional calculations because my idea here, let me go back here to the indicator. My idea is not only to create 1.5, average true range calculated values on top and at the bottom, but maybe do another one, maybe do a 3 standard deviation, 3 average true ATRs, 3 ATRs. We have a 1.5 ATR. What I'm trying to add is a 3 times the ATR. It would give us another band on the top and another band at the bottom. We can color code them the same, but maybe make them thinner or maybe thicker, however you want to do it. But I just want an extra line that gives me additional support resistance lines that I can work with. Maybe by looking at this indicator, I can see that when the indicator is in a rally, it goes outside of these bands many times. So maybe reaching this other band could make sense in the analysis of the indicator. Whether it is, to create profit targets or stop losses, it's a way of looking at how the price activity interacts with the lines of your indicator. So what I'm going to do is create those additional two bands on this indicator using average true range. Let's go back here to the code. Many of the modifications that I do is using code that already exists. So you don't really have to reinvent the wheel. Right here, I have how the upper band and the lower band are calculated. I also see that my upper band and lower band are kind of declared at the very top here under variables. So if we want to create other bands, we're going to have to follow the same syntax here where we declare new bands, assign the calculation to those new bands, and then plot those new bands. So it's a three-part process, not as easy as the RSI, because the RSI was just the value that we wanted to plot, which is 50. Here we get involved into declaring variables and creating calculations, but it's nothing difficult. What I'm going to do is add a comma here. Comma is just to separate variables, and I'm using a comma because I'm going to add another upper band and another lower band. I'm going to do upper band, and I'll say 2. And the 0 here in parentheses means that it's a numeric variable. That's all that it means. The 0 inside parentheses is going to hold a number. I'm just going to follow the same syntax here. The spaces around the 0 are not really required. I can add them if I want to be consistent with what was there. But EasyLanguage doesn't read spaces. They're skipped. So a lot of times you can skip them too, or add them. Sometimes if you add them, it just increases the readability, so you're able to read it, better. I'm going to have an upper band 2, and I'm going to have a lower band 2. This is additional calculated values. So let's initialize that to 0, and that's it. Upper band 2, lower band 2. And all I need to do here then is add the calculations. Upper band 2 equals the average plus shift times 2. Let me put that inside parentheses. Shift times 2. So notice what I'm doing. I'm not really adding another number of ATRs, but I could. So I could have, separate factors. And that gives me the flexibility of using maybe 1.5 on the first band, and maybe use a 3.5 on the other one. What I'm doing here is I'm simplifying my approach, and I'm saying, I'm just going to take whatever shift you provide. No, not the shift. Okay. Yeah, the shift is the number of ATRs times the true range. Whatever, instead of doing shift here, then I need to calculate the shift here. So I'm just going to take whatever shift is added and subtracted from the middle line. I'm just going to double that. I could have, maybe calculated another average true range, which, it overcomplicates the code a little bit. Doesn't overcomplicate it. If you need to create another, shift, that's up to you. But what I'm doing here, I'm just multiplying it by 2. And my lower band 2 equals the average minus, and in this case, it's also the shift times 2. Does that make sense? So whatever you put in, the number of ATRs here is just going to double that. Interesting. Then right here in the plot statements, all you need to do is add the plots. Plot 4. By the way, I don't need this word displays. Displays is, well, I can add it just to be consistent, Displays is just if you want to move the indicator forward or backward. It doesn't do any other thing than that. It's just shifting. It's like grabbing the indicator and pulling it backward or forward depending on the displaced value. And what I'm plotting here is the upper band 2, and this is going to be upper band 2. Notice that I'm creating a label 2 so that I'm able to identify which one's which. And then plot 5, I can add the word displays one more time and say, I'm going to plot the lower band 2, and this is my lower band 2. All right. There we go. Let me verify this. Remember, I verify so that it recognizes the new plots that I added. And then I go into the properties. I'm going to right click and go to properties to change the style. So for the chart style, notice that now I see the upper band and the lower band too, which I'm just going to leave them thinner. And they're already set to the thinnest one. But I am going to change the color because the upper band 2, well, let's not change the color because it's already cyan, and the upper band here is cyan too. The lower band is red, and the lower band here is red. What I wanted to make sure is that they were both the same color, so they're aligned. They don't have to be the same color. These can be the color that you want, but it just creates a better visual. I'm going to click OK, and then verify one more time. Verification is just a check of errors. And every indicator needs to be verified before you can use it. So let me go back here to my TradeStation platform. And in here, let's remove the one that we added first and go to Studies, Add Studies. And let's go to exclamation JN and add our Keltner channel. There we go. So now we have an indicator that adds these additional plots, an additional upper band and an additional lower band. And you can see in many cases how the bars are touching that line that we just added. It serves as an additional support line, right, on the studies. Same here on the bottom side. Very nice. And the same way that you can add plots, you can also remove plots. A lot of times, if you don't need that middle line, you can also remove it. And if you want to introduce other calculations, you can as well. The same with Bollinger bands. A lot of times, Bollinger bands, let me just go back here and show you exactly what I mean. Studies, add studies. Bollinger bands, they give you, the calculated values, one standard deviation above. And actually, no, the standard is, or the default one gives you 2 standard deviations above and 2 standard deviations below. The indicator within TradeStation does allow you to modify the number of standard deviations you're going to be using, but it would be great if you could have, multiple plots where you can have some plots at 1 standard deviation and then 2 plots at 2 standard deviations, and maybe a third plot at 3 standard deviations. That's something you can do inside of the code. I think we have a few more minutes and we can do this quickly so you can see what I mean by that. Let me go ahead and edit the Bollinger band. Okay, for the Bollinger band, we have 4 more inputs. That's why you see a lot of text here. Let me make sure that I don't have a Bollinger band study with JN. I don't. I have something different. So let's just save it as file, save as, and this will be Bollinger bands, JN, exclamation JN, Bollinger bands. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down to where I find the plots. I find the calculated values here for the upper band and the lower band. And this is plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3. Here, upper band, number of standard deviations. Of course, I can, the same thing as the Keltner channel, I can go to the inputs and create inputs for each one of the bands and separate them. But I want to create a simpler type of calculation. And what I want is probably set the average with the standard deviation default. Notice that the number of standard deviations, the default, is set to 2. I'm going to start at 1. And that way, when I do my calculated values, I can just multiply by 2 or 3 and get the calculation that I want for my 2 standard deviations and my 3 standard deviations. What I have to remember is not to change the default here of the number of deviations up or down, because that'll change my other standard deviations and make them, 4 standard deviations and 5 standard deviations, which is not really what I want. But this one right here, I'm going to make it simple so that I can use the multiplication factor. So all I need to do, number of deviations up times standard deviations. This is using the standard deviation function. So let's just add more calculations here. So I'm going to do upper band 2 equals the average plus num devs up times 2 times sdev. So I'm using the same calculation. I'm just adding, let me put this inside parentheses. So it multiplies num devs up, which is something that is provided by an input, and multiplied it by 2. I'm going to copy this line and paste it again, because my third line is going to be exactly the same, but times 3. Let me copy this one more time and do the lower band. Lower band 2 is the num devs up, in this case is num devs down, times 2. And is it a minus or a plus? In this case, by the standard deviations, num devs up. Oh, the thing is that over here at the top, it's already a negative number, so it'll be a negative number, so you don't really have to subtract it. It'll just add a negative number, which is pretty much the same thing. Let me copy this, and I'm going to create the lower band 3, and the multiplication factor is 3 here. Okay, let me verify this. You can verify it at any point just to make sure that you're not generating errors. And now I'm generating an error because I introduced a word that doesn't exist in the code. If I look at my variables, lower band and upper band exist, but upper band 2 doesn't know what it is because we didn't declare it up here at the top. So I'm going to do that here quickly. Upper band 2, 0. Upper band 3, 0. And I'll do the other 2. Lower band 2, initialized to 0. And lower band 2, initialized to 0. Notice that I'm not following the same, column type format. I am separating them with commas. I'm not, adding the extra spaces. You can do that on your side as well. Okay, let me verify. Let's see. This word has already been defined. Oh, because I have 2 lower band. So this is lower band 3. There we go. Now we have no errors. When we verify, no errors in line. Okay. And then just the last thing we're going to do, once we assign the calculated values, I didn't share any, by the way, I'm just answering a question here in the chat. Vinny, I didn't share any links because I didn't have any ready. I just showed a very simple PowerPoint slide. But if you need it, I can always share it with you. Just send me an email at education@tradestation.com. Let me just put in the email here one more time in case you guys missed it. And what's left here on this indicator is just to add the additional plots. Plot 4. Many times I've tried to rearrange the plot numbers just so that it's logical on the screen, and I've gotten in trouble. In trouble meaning that it's a mess inside of the code, and then the attributes of or the properties or the styling gets all shifted around. So I've learned to keep, the plot numbers the way they are because they are already configured, and then just add the additional plots. In this case, I'm adding an upper band 2. Let's do band 2. And then plot 5, upper band 3, and call this band 3. Plot 6, lower band 2, band 2. Actually, this should be because you see if you do band 2 here and band 2, it'll say you have the same name. This is not correct. Let me do upper just as the calculated value does. So lower band 2. And then plot number 7 is going to be the lower band 3. Lower band 3. Okay. So we added our 2 additional upper and lower bands. Let's verify this. Now, because we have a plot number 4 here. This is a type of indicator, and it's good that this happens because many indicators inside of TradeStation are designed to be used in multiple applications. And that's why it says if in a chart is false, meaning that it's not on a chart, meaning that it's in RadarScreen, it's going to use other plot statements. And notice that this is plot number 4, and we had already used plot number 4 up here. You see some of the things or some of the conflicts that are created. So now you can either fix this indicator so that it doesn't use this whole piece of code, or use a different plot number. Maybe because I can look at, this is using plot number 4. Maybe I'll use a different plot number. I think that'll be easier. Instead of, I'll just skip 4 and say 5, and I'll make this 6, and I'll make this 7, and I'll make this 8. Let's verify one more time. There we go. Now it verifies and it shows no errors. You see how I did that? Just skip the number and continue the sequence. Remember, the sequence can go up all the way to 99, and that'll make it a very an indicator with many, many lines. Let's go here to properties because I want to make sure that the colors align. The chart style, notice that it has the upper band and the lower bands already added. And the chart color, I want to make to the same color. The upper bands, I want to make them all the same color. So they're all using this magenta color. You can change them. So for example, I can use maybe, I don't know, a darker blue. And then for the 3, maybe use a darker blue. And then since my lower band here is red, I can use maybe a darker red. And even use kind of a, I don't know, different colors. Click OK, and then verify one more time. So now if I go back to my TradeStation, I remove this. I go to Studies, Add Studies, exclamation JN, Bollinger Bands. Here we go. And this is the way that it looks. Fancy. Sometimes I've heard technical analysts say it's not, really what your indicator is telling you is just how cool it looks on your chart, right? So here we have the Bollinger Band with additional upper bands and lower bands, the ones that are inside the indicator. Let me see if this, yeah, you see the number of deviations is 1. So that's the cyan and the red are 1 standard deviations. The next color are 2 standard deviations, and the outer ones are 3 standard deviations. As we made it, we were using multiplication factors for that. Of course, you can come here and modify the code and say, well, for this, I want a 0.5 standard deviation and 0.5 for the -1. So that gives you a closer Bollinger Band. Now the cyan and the red are just half standard deviation. The next one is 1, and the other one is 1.5 standard deviations. But it does allow you to create these additional plots inside of your indicators to enhance your visual, or to use additional lines as entry and exit signals, or to enhance, anything inside of your code. That's my class for today. And I hope that you guys liked it. Again, my PowerPoint did not have much information in it, just the fact that you can add up to 99 different plots, and to remember to use save as, so you don't have to modify the original code, that you can just use a copy of the indicator, and that way if you mess up the code, you can always revert back to the original one. Okay, but I want to say thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you for your participation in class, and I hope to see you in a future event. Check out the events calendar. We have many sessions that are new. I'm not sure if you guys heard about options replay. It happened yesterday. We should have that recording up very soon, but we are making an emphasis on options education. So if you haven't been to our options education center, please do so. You just have to go to TradeStation.com and hover over Learn, which is one of the menus at the top. And under Learn, you find options education. I encourage everyone to go there and explore. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.